Welcome to the What Really Happened radio show. Because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show. It's Friday, March 4th, 2016, end of the week here. Thank goodness it's Friday. It's been a long week. Phone lines are open, 877-300-7645. Brad is sitting in our control room today, taking over from Tom, and he's going to be answering the phones here. Quick word of explanation. Yesterday, as you probably remember, toward the end of the program, all of a sudden we vanished. And as near as I can tell from the logs, the problem was with our local Roadrunner provider, Time Warner Oceanic. And there was all kinds of garbage coming down the line and whatnot. So hopefully they've got the gremlins out of their system. But, you know, when you're descending into a fascist economic dictatorship, the Internet's not going to be reliable. The electricity's going to go on and off. The roads are going to be full of holes. The bridges are going to be collapsing. And it's just more reminders that we do not live in the greatest nation on earth and have not for quite some time. And that is just where we are right now. So, last night we had another episode of the Let's All Club Donald Trump Like a Baby Seal show over on the We Hate Donald Trump network, formerly Fox News. And not too surprisingly, it almost seems like it helped him, along with that attack by Mitt Romney. We ran a poll on our website, who won the Let's All Club Donald Trump Like a Baby Seal show. Donald Trump came out 91%. John Kasich, 7%. And here's the stunners. Ted Cruz came in at 2% and Marco Rubio at 1%, third and fourth places. And these results were matched by other online polls all over, and we glued them all together into a giant panel and put it up there for people to look at. Now, during the debates, Marco Rubio attacked Democrats for politicizing the Flint water crisis. And Marco Rubio just puffed himself up as much as he could and said, it's absurd, it's outrageous that you would politicize the Flint water crisis. What's outrageous is Rubio is defending the political process by which these children were deliberately poisoned. That's what's absurd. It is not outrageous to say that what was done to the children of Flint is an abomination. Amazing. Now, during the debates, Marco Rubio made a claim that Donald Trump's university received a D- from the Better Business Bureau. And during a commercial break, Trump handed a paper to the moderator, which was the actual report from the Better Business Bureau showing that Marco Rubio was lying. And, you know, here is a big problem with our entire political establishment. If you lie to the government, you will go to jail. But government can lie to you and absolutely nothing will happen. In fact, politicians consider lies to you protected free speech. Unlike boycotting Israel, which by golly, that cannot be allowed to stand. But the politicians will lie to you with impunity. Corporate media lies to you with impunity. Only you are required to be truthful. And in the end, that's all that power is. The willingness and ability to do things ordinary people can't. We're all told to be truthful. Government lies to us. Corporate media lies to us. Big Pharma lies to us. We're all told not to steal. Government steals from us all the time. So do the bankers. We're taught not to kill. And yet our government is laying waste to something like 17 different countries right now as I speak. That's what power is. They get to do these things. You are not under penalty of law. The sheriff of Nottingham will come on over and slap you upside of your head if you dare act like we, the rulers, do. Story coming out of IntelliHub. The establishment attacks on Trump are backfiring. The populace is always going to move toward truth and reality. That's true. Plus, we have a strong sense of identification with the underdog because we have been treated so badly by the establishments for so many years. We're not going to identify with and support the establishment that has driven us all into poverty, destroyed our infrastructure, destroyed our quality of life, sent our high-paying jobs to other countries, and takes our children to kill and cripple them in wars of conquest. Nobody wants that. Trump is out there saying, let's just go on in from a different angle and try and solve these problems some other way. See, the way the political system always works is it's always the same sort of people. The insiders, the war hawks, the liars, the money junkies. It doesn't matter how you vote. You're not going to see any changes. Now, all of a sudden, we have a candidate who really feels like shaking things up, and that's why people are jumping on board with his campaign here. Article coming out of RootForAmerica.com. Poor, pathetic, sore loser Mitt Romney hands the nomination to Trump. And they're talking about this wave of anger that followed Mitt Romney just coming out of nowhere and launching an attack on Donald Trump that was full of, again, outright lies, misrepresentations. Of course, if you remember Mitt Romney in 2012, I mean, he was talking out of both sides of his mouth all the time. He was for TARP, then he was against it, then he was for gun control, then he was for gun freedom, was for this and for that. Again, classic politician. And a lot of people are very angry because Mitt Romney represents the face of a concerted effort by the leadership of the GOP party to ignore and deflect and defy the will of Republican voters. And we suffered through that in silence in 2008, 2012 with Ron Paul. 3 strikes and you're out. People are very, very angry. Now, an article came out of marketticker.org saying that they predict Romney will do exactly nothing other than drive more people to Trump. And that certainly seems to be the case, but we are hearing now that Darrell Crate, the treasurer and executive committee member of the Romney for President campaign in 2008 and 2012, has filed a Romney for President statement of organization with the Federal Election Commission. And it was filed under the candidate name Mitt Romney Paul Ryan. So that's the ticket they're going to put together. Now, there's a little bit of a problem. They have missed the primaries and the caucuses. They have no delegates. The only way they are going to be able to run for the White House is if the Republican National Convention throws the nomination to them and absolutely defies the will of their own voters, at which point I would not blame the Republican voters for burning the Republican Central Committee to the ground. Or all of these high muckety-mucks in the Republican Party talking about an independent ticket, this may be their candidate. They're going to leave the traditional Republican Party and mount an independent campaign with Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan, and they're going to spend whatever money it takes to go to all 50 states and get their names on the ballots. And they're still going to lose, even with massive election fraud. The behavior of both of these parties is angering the American people. And if the GOP leadership mounts a new independent party and actually succeeds in getting their candidate onto the ballot, it's going to break the traditional party duopoly. They're actually going to destroy their own lock on power to get past Donald Trump. And they're still going to lose, because we all remember what Mitt Romney's really like. Nobody's going to vote for Mitt Romney. It's amazing. And these, even with all the vote rigging, he can't do it. And they're out there just screaming about how bad Donald Trump is going to be. And again, the displayed attitude is, you are all morons, you don't understand how the country works, and therefore you should not be making your own choice about candidates. Even though that's what we're allowed to do under the Constitution. Over at CNN Money, they're saying Donald Trump could cause a recession. They're quoting Mitt Romney. Donald Trump could cause a recession. Hey, CNN Money, we're in a recession right now under the current leadership that you keep lauding as doing such a wonderful job. Get 6 Pinocchios on that particular whopper. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials. When we come on back, Newt Gingrich interviewed on the I Hate Donald Trump network, formerly Fox News. Interesting quote. We'll be right back. Hello, hi, America. Welcome back to the show here. And last night, Newt Gingrich was on the I Hate Donald Trump network, formerly Fox News, just before the debate. And Gingrich laid it out, why the whole establishment hates him. He's an outsider. He's not them. He's not part of the club. He's uncontrollable. He hasn't been through the initiation rites. He didn't belong to the secret society. He's absolutely right. The rulership of this country has been confined to this little clique Even Kennedy was trying to warn us all about secret societies in our midst trying to take control of our country. And they are definitely panicking. Reporter Jonathan Chait tweeted out calls for assassination of Donald Trump. Glenn Beck went out and said, if I get close enough to Trump, the stabbing just wouldn't stop. Isn't it a crime to be encouraging or threatening the assassination of a candidate? Another story coming out of finance over at Yahoo. Americans just aren't miserable enough to elect Donald Trump. Actually, yeah, we are. And it's more than misery. We're ticked off. We're angry. All right, we're going to grab ourselves a phone call from Michael in Texas. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, how are you doing?
Okay, for a Friday.
Yeah. Hey, I was the one that went and sent you all those screenshots of the polls from last night's debate.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I put them all together in a big single panel, and I said, this about, says it all. And I posted it to Facebook and Yahoo and the front of my page. So thank you for those. Yes, very much.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. But no, there was a kind of a reminiscent of a clip yesterday, or there was a clip yesterday that came out of Marco Rubio where he was antagonizing Donald Trump about saying he would lose there was polls that he would lose to Hillary Clinton and whatnot. And he just kept antagonizing, poking the bear with Donald Trump until he got like a big ruckus going. And then he just had a big cheeser grin on his face. And it couldn't help remind me of the 2008 campaign of Ron Paul and why Rick Santorum stuck around, because that's what he reminded me of. Because Rick Santorum was just like Marco Rubio, dwelling in the single digits. He stuck around in the campaign just to antagonize Ron Paul. And Ron Paul being the statesman, he's not going to go at him like, say, Donald Trump will. So I think that's kind of where Marco Rubio is relegated to now, is just kind of... Yeah,
he's acting like a high school bully is what he's acting like, And actually, they're all high schoolers except for Donald Trump. These people never grew up. They never had to. They got wealth and power. They never had to actually grow up to be mature adults.
Yeah, and I think he's just accepted that role. Like, he's never going to do better than fourth place or third place.
Well, he may still have hopes of being the eventual vice president.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't imagine anybody wanting to be vice president. I mean, unless they're just sort of betting on the death of the president, which, John Adams called the vice presidency the most boring job in government, and he absolutely was right. You sit there in front of the Senate banging the gavel. You don't even get to vote unless there's a tie.
Yeah. Well, I'm just keeping it brief today, but, I just wanted to touch on those 2 points. But have a good show and have a good weekend.
All right, same to you. Thank you very much. We're going to switch over to Daniel in Canada. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Yeah, up here in Canada on our Zionist-controlled media, we've got lots of Trump bashing. They're still going on about this KKK and David Duke business.
I mean, they're out again. Corporate media nothing happens to them when they lie. They're allowed to lie. You are not. If you lie, you will be punished. But politicians and media, of course, they're going to lie. That's what they're in business to do. And this whole issue about the KKK, based on Trump's father, the original article about the riot does not say that Fred Trump was in the KKK. He just got caught in the violence and was arrested and released without charge. That's all it says. And by the way, if you go to my readers' letters section, somebody screen captured a discussion off of Twitter of Democrats planning to dress up in KKK robes and stand outside Trump events with pro-Trump signs.
Exactly. There was even an incident in California, I believe, with the KKK. We never hear about the KKK except twice in one day.
We only hear about the KKK when the Southern Poverty Law Center is doing a fundraiser. That's the only time they drag those people out.
There was a Michael Chertoff came out and said Trump's the greatest security threat to America.
Yeah, I mean,
Michael Chertoff, let 70 Israelis go home with their video evidence of dancing on top of the vans in New Jersey.
Yeah. Chertoff just turned around and sent him back to Israel. After the police arrested them for cheering as the World Trade Towers came down. And again, if you go back to Carl Cameron's 4-part story on the Israeli spy ring, a U.S. government official confirmed there was evidence linking these Israelis to 9/11 and chaired off, sent him home.
Yep. It just reminds me, you mentioned George Orwell's 1984, and there's a scene in there and in the book of the 2 minutes of hate. And that's what I see right now. It's almost like I wish the Fox News would just have, for 2 minutes, just everyone in America that hates Trump to have their 2 minutes, and that's it. And then leave me alone after that.
Yeah, show me something actually fun and entertaining here. But you're absolutely right here. That's why I've renamed the Fox Television Network the We Hate Donald Trump Network, because that's all they're talking about. Although today they're spending a lot of time on the knife and O.J. Simpson and the rest of it. But
yeah, they mentioned. Sorry, they mentioned that Trump went bankrupt 4 times.
Yes.
But they failed to mention that he came back from bankruptcy 4 times.
Yes.
I mean, you try that and become a multi-billionaire.
Yeah, and you know something? The more they bash on Trump, the higher his numbers go. He looks poised to win in Florida tomorrow, Marco Rubio's home state. Now, at this point, Rubio, to save face, may just try and steal the election no matter how obvious it is. And again, every one of these caucuses and primaries, there are allegations and irregularities. And, again, this election is so crooked, even the foreign press is starting to laugh at the U.S., over what a tin pot dictatorship we've obviously become.
I mean, bringing back Romney, that's their last great hope here. They couldn't dig up Reagan's corpse, so they brought Romney out.
Well, I'm even hearing that now that the courts have thrown out the charge against Rick Perry, which is what drove him out of the campaign, they may now actually try and draft him back in if Romney can't get any traction, and he's not getting any traction. Nobody's paying attention to Romney because he destroyed his own credibility in 2012. And by the way, there's that video when Mitt Romney came to town. I mean, Donald Trump made things. He built casinos and hotels and all the rest of it. Mitt Romney made his money going in, buying things that other people had built, firing all the workers and selling off the bits and pieces, and then he moved on to the next one. Mitt Romney is a vulture, and he feeds on the American people and American industry. Donald Trump is a builder. And we got to take a break for commercials. Thank you very much. Right. We got another call waiting when we come back from these words from our sponsors. Aloha America, welcome back to the show here. And before we get back to the phone calls here, I'm actually taking a look at idstronghold.com. And the reason I'm doing that is because I avoid any credit cards or anything with RFID. Unfortunately, credit card companies are now saying you will have an RFID chip. And I just got my passport renewed, and it also has RFID. So I'm looking at the ID Stronghold RFID blocking passport cover. It's very reasonably priced. I think I'm going to get one. Because we know the U.S. government isn't going to do anything about the cyber criminals, because the cyber criminals, in all probability, are working for the NSA, FBI, CIA. And certainly, despite all of the best efforts to spy on the law-abiding American citizen in the name of combating crime and terror, they haven't actually found any of the cyber criminals, have they? I mean, it's epidemic. Malware, spyware, scamming phone calls. It's open season on the American people. And anybody who thinks the government is going to protect you, oh boy, are you living in a dream world. Okay, let's get on back here to the phones. Laura in Kansas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. First of all, I wanted to apologize because I think I've blown up your email today. I've been sending you articles. I cannot believe how desperate the Republican Party is to get Donald Trump out any which way they can. I mean, they're even now. There's an article on CNN I sent you, Money CNN, that he's going to cause a recession.
We just talked about that one.
Elected. Oh my gosh. This hasn't been coming in years. Like our deficit, the debt that the United States owes has.
We have actually been in a recession continuously since 2008. We've got almost 100 million Americans willing and able to work who have not been able to find a job in years. The only people who are saying the economy is great are the politicians and the corporate media, who are, as we know, professional liars, and they're allowed to do it. You're not allowed to lie. Bad things will happen to you if you lie.
Of course not.
But for the power elite, the corporate media, and the government, for politicians, lying is protected speech under the First Amendment. Remember Brian Williams over at NBC got caught lying, and the only thing that happened to him is he had to take a pay cut from $10 million a year down to $8 million a year. Oh, how he must be suffering.
Oh, you're not kidding. And then the USA Watchdog, Greg Hunter, today also went ballistics, just like you're doing, about all the things that are being done to Trump. And he says, and you know, it makes sense, it's true, because I kind of wondered why Sanders was not getting the same flack as Trump, and what he said is because he doesn't look like he could take the nomination.
No, he doesn't.
So,
Hillary's locked up the Democratic nomination with the superdelegates. Anybody who thinks that Hillary is not going to get that nomination, the only thing that's going to stop Hillary from getting the nomination is if somebody in the government actually does the right thing and arrests her for espionage and mishandling classified documents, or that clot in her brain shifts around and causes some more damage. Short of those two, she's going to be the Democratic nominee, and the only person who can keep her from the White House is Donald Trump. And maybe the reason everybody is out to get rid of Trump is there's a little backroom deal that is going to make Hillary the president, because Hillary has all the secrets that could bring down the entire federal government and the willingness to go on out and tell everybody, you make me president or I will destroy the entire federal government. And that's why you have everybody scrambling to support her. That's why you have Bernie Sanders saying, I'm sick and tired of hearing about the email scandal, when that was the one thing that could have given him the nomination.
It's true. It's very true. And the last thing I was going to point out, I had also sent you an article where all of a sudden Rubio is saying, well, I'll support him if he comes up. That smells to me of, okay, if we can't get rid of him any other way, let one of us, maybe if we're nice enough to him, maybe one of us will become the vice president, and then you can follow the logic from there. If they're vice president and he's not president,
yep.
Oh, well. So,
well, you know, Trump gets to pick his vice president. There's been a long tradition of presidents who will pick vice presidents that are so offensive, it acts as a deterrent to being assassinated. But the smartest thing Trump could do right now is pick a female vice president running mate, and that would yank the women's vote right out from underneath Hillary Clinton. And that's what he would do. I would hope that somebody from the Trump campaign is listening to my show. I think they are, because I wound up on their mailing list. And by the way, if anybody from Trump's campaign is listening to my show, please add a PayPal link to your little campaign website, because I'd like to buy buttons and stuff, but I don't want to use a credit card.
Well, thank you, Mike, for what you do. I've learned a lot by listening to your show. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much here, and we're going to switch over to Randy in Texas. Aloha, Randy. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, not much, Mike.
Oh, well, thank you for calling.
No, I was saying that I've been saying for the past month or so that Ted Cruz was a booger-eating moron.
Oh, okay.
On TV last night.
Oh, man. I mean, between, the booger eating and Marco Rubio insulting Donald Trump's genitalia, it really does look like, a frat house, gone wild. Like, there's a kegger going on and they're up there just, trying to diss each other. They really are acting like high schoolers.
Yeah, it's, I could make so many sophomore jokes that it isn't even funny.
Oh, you can't possibly keep up with them. When it comes to being sophomoric, you cannot. These are professional sophomoric people. They're politicians.
Oh yeah, and I just love the fact that they can't seem to land a punch on Trump that draws any blood.
No, they can't, because what's really happened is they're used to doing all of this in an area that's completely controlled, and all the candidates are controlled, and all the candidates are exactly the same. And Trump is this outsider. It's just like Gingrich said. He's not part of the club. He's outside. And for Americans, we don't want any more of the people in the club to be running the country, because they've done such a terrible job for us. They're doing a great job for themselves. They're all multimillionaires, and they've got wealth and power and privilege, and they think that's the way the world is supposed to be. We don't want another one of the secret society people in the White House or Congress for that matter. Trump gives us an opportunity to peacefully get the club out of our capital city, and that's why they're so scared of him.
Yeah, like, oh, God, what did I just go blank on his name? George Carlson said, it's a big club and you ain't in it.
Yeah, George Carlin. Boy, we certainly miss it.
Sorry.
Yeah, but that speech was right bang spot on. I mean, Carlin had reached the stage in his career where he didn't need any more money, and he wasn't afraid of going on out and telling the truth. And that's exactly what he did in those last few shows that he did, and it's a shame that he's gone. He was right about it. These elites in Washington, D.C. and Wall Street believe they own you. And they're just angry that you're uppity enough to want to get some other kind of leaders in there who are not part of the little elite club.
Yeah, well, they better realize one thing. Even the toothless can get ruthless.
Yeah, oh, I like that. That's a good statement.
No, it's a line from Pink Floyd's song, but yeah.
No, I must have been really stoned when I was playing the album because I don't remember it from him. But that was a long time ago. Remember what they say. If you can remember the 60s, you weren't actually there.
Yep. That was just a little bit before my time.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for reminding me how old I am. We're going to let you go because we got to take a break for some commercials, and we'll be back with more phone calls. And by the way, surveys of actual Republican voters are saying, yeah, they're going to vote for Donald Trump. Doesn't matter what the elites are saying about going, they're going to vote for Donald Trump. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And before we go back to the phone lines here, story coming out of ActivistPost.com. Did Marco Rubio steal the Minnesota primary? And apparently there's a report out about all kinds of irregularities and the clear possibility of election fraud. And again, this election is so phony and fake, the rest of the world is laughing at the United States. And they're seeing all of these media and government elites talking about the brand of the GOP party. Or what part of democracy are these people not understanding? The will of the people is the law of the land, and I am sick and tired of all of these individuals in government and corporations and media who are standing up there saying, well, you're too stupid to run the country. You just have to take our word for it. This is the way to go. And we've been playing that game for 30 years, and look at the condition of the country. Now, the money junkies are doing great. They're making out like bandits. But for the rest of the country, look at the decay and rot, deterioration, poison water coming out of our faucets in our homes. I really loved that HBO series Newsroom. I'm sorry it's not coming back. That opening speech by Will McAvoy, how we are not the greatest nation on earth, is something everybody needs to memorize. We were once the greatest nation on earth. We aren't anymore. What happened? Were we invaded from outside? No. Were we conquered? No. Did an asteroid land on our land and lay waste? No. We got looted and plundered by our own banks and our own politicians. They strip-mined the place to put it in their pockets. And then they turn around and say, you people are morons for wanting to run the country differently. It's working fine for us. What's wrong with you? And I'll give you a good idea of just how out of control it is. Okay, Haim Saban is pouring huge amounts of money into Hillary Clinton's campaign, millions of dollars, all on Hillary's promise that if elected president, she will shut down the boycott, divestment, sanctions movement. Now, boycotts are a recognized expression of our First Amendment right to protest. So we have Hillary Clinton, candidate for President of the United States of America, accepting donations based on her promise to end the First Amendment. Think about it. A presidential candidate for whom the Bill of Rights is already a target. And we've had enough of that over the last couple of decades. between loss of our Fourth Amendment right to privacy, attacks on the Second Amendment, attacks on the Fifth Amendment, totally ignoring the Ninth and Tenth Amendment. All right, let's grab some phone calls here. Scott in Texas, thank you for being so patient. What's on your mind?
Yeah, first off, Garland, Texas here. I just want to publicly excoriate the talk radio stations around here for promoting Cruz and Rubio. You guys are sick. Y'all make me sick. Now, for what I really want to talk about, it's time for us, since we're driving the narrative, we need to flip the script. Mm-hmm. And how we do that is that since all these big talking heads are talking about how Trump is going to drive the economy down, make everything so horrible and terrible, say, guess what? That's exactly what needs to happen. Hillary needs to go down. 80% of Washington needs to be indicted and go to jail. All this needs to happen. We know all these wars are illegal. Everything is going on is totally illegal. Rip the Band-Aid off. We know the system is going to crash. Let's let it crash. We want it to crash. Hey, Donald Trump is helping us do exactly what we need to do, and that's take the system down and rebuild it like we need it to be.
Absolutely right on that. And same thing with those bankers. Instead of constantly propping up these bankers and their criminality on the backs of the taxpayers, we need to shut those banks down and throw those bankers in prison. It worked over in Iceland.
All of them.
They just threw them into jail, wrote off the debt that was created through fraud, and Iceland is doing much better. You're never going to hear about that in the American corporate media because it might give you slaves uppity ideas to stand up to your masters in the private central bank. You're not allowed to do that. You're all bought and paid for. Congress sold you into the slavery of the Federal Reserve 100 years ago. And you slaves ought to know your place. What's wrong with you that you don't know your place?
Exactly. So that's what everybody just needs to say. Guess what? We want it to crash, and that's what we, the people, are saying. We want this system to crash, the Federal Reserve, all of it. We want it to crash, and we're taking it there. And Donald Trump just happens to be at the right place at the right time because the system is coming down. It's inevitable. It has no choice. Rip the Band-Aid off. It's going to happen whether they like it or not. And that's all I got. Y'all have a good weekend.
Well, thank you very much there, Scott. And before you go, there's something else you need to think about a crash, because everybody's looking to crash. Bad thing, bad thing, bad thing. Okay, who does a crash hurt? It hurts the people who've got all the money. For most Americans, we're already living as if the crash has already occurred. When it happens, it's not going to affect us, hardly at all. I mean, there's all kinds of horror stories out there saying, oh, it's going to be terrible for you. No, we're already there. We're already living in the new depression. The crash is going to bring down the money junkies.
Hey, they're just going to come down to our level, and they ain't going to like it once they get down here.
No, because, you know, when you're rising to the top, be careful who you step on, because you will meet them on the way back down.
Exactly. So, hey, you have a great weekend. Have a good show, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Mo in Florida. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Michael. I got two things to ask you about. I appreciate taking my call. First one is about Sybil Edmonds and then Donald Trump. Sybil Edmonds, you just have to love her. I know she's doing that news bud, and you had her on there. What is her position on Israel? I can't really nail it down. I've listened to her quite a few times. Does she know what the head of the snake is?
I think she does, but again, I haven't followed all of her programming either. Her focus seems to be more on internal domestic deceptions and cover-ups and less the international stuff. And but again, you follow any of these things, sooner or later it's going to cross over into Israel. We're hearing now that the Knesset is trying to figure some way they can finally get Netanyahu out of power because now they're scared of him, of him starting a war that Israel cannot possibly win, even with its nuclear weapons.
Yeah, people are waking up. Well, the other question I had was, I know that you're very good at this forensic stuff, with the Vince Foster thing, and we always talk about Teflon underwear. I know you're just joking around in some respects with Trump, but you remember when Bob Marley was, they gave him the CIA or somebody gave him some tennis shoes? I shouldn't laugh and he had a wire in it and poked his foot and he died later, got cancer. What do you think? There's so many ways for, I think Trump's 70, for them to get rid of him. I can't imagine, plutonium or something, but he's got to be not aware of being shot. He's got to be aware of, I don't know, he's a food taster.
Well, what they do is the same thing they do for the White House. The food is purchased by anonymous parties in far-flung sources, so the people in the stores don't know it's going to Donald Trump or whoever the protected individual is. That's how you deal with that. Generally, if you can obscure the trail of the supplies between the supplier and the person who's getting it, the ability of somebody to intercept it and plant something on there is greatly, greatly reduced. There are other issues. I mean, Glenn Beck is saying if he gets close to Trump, he's just going to stab him. That's going to be pretty obvious. But there are all kinds of chemicals that can trigger heart attacks and stuff like that. And, it is rather daunting as we dig into the history of the Central Intelligence Agency and we find out how much research they have done to the end of killing off people who really haven't done anything wrong, but they're just in the way.
I think it's some kind of radio wave, some kind of Tesla thing. They could probably fry his brain from quite a distance, but I appreciate it.
Well, the only way they could do that, I mean, with a really powerful microwave beam, but then it's going to leave evidence all around that that's exactly what happened. So I don't think that would work very well.
I hope you make. Thanks, Michael. Keep up the good work.
All right,
you.
I'll do my best here, and we're going to let you go. We got 2 more callers, but we're about to hit our top of the hour commercial and news break, and so Mark and Sean, please stay with us. We'll be back in a little bit, about 6 minutes. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, and we have 2 callers waiting. Before we take those phone calls, though, interesting little story coming out from postnews.co. Apparently, Hillary Clinton is paying herself from campaign funds. So far, apparently, $250,000 she's just taken out of the campaign contributions and put in her pocket, which I think is kind of a little unusual, especially when you're a candidate who's already got oodles and oodles of their own money. Of course, at this point, Hillary seems very assured of the Democratic nomination, but this kind of recklessness, plundering her own campaign war chest to the tune of $250,000, suggests that she thinks the fix is in for the general election. And that's something we need to be on the lookout for. Now, it may not be as easy as Hillary thinks. Article coming out of Liberty Blitzkrieg. Over 50,000 Bernie Sanders supporters are saying, absolutely, they will not vote for Hillary Clinton. They'll vote for Trump. We have a little button we made up. It says, I would rather clean out all the toilets in Grand Central Station with my tongue than vote for Hillary. Unfortunately, I can't get it made up because Cafe Press doesn't allow people to use other people's trademark logos and stuff. But you get the idea. And, of course, if Trump were to pick a female vice presidential running mate, even Carly Fiorina with her lousy track record at Hewlett-Packard, that would yank the woman vote out from underneath Hillary Clinton. All right, let's grab a couple of phone calls here. Mark in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. I just got a letter from Senator Richard Burr. A few weeks ago, I called his office about that bill that they were going to authorize Obama or any other president to basically conduct war wherever they wanted around the world without having to go back to Congress. Mm-hmm. Okay? So, I told him this is terrible. I told, the secretary, and she gave me a hard time and all that, too.
So it's also unconstitutional. Only Congress can declare war. I mean, if Congress has declared war on planet Earth, well, then I guess it all works out, sort of, kind of, technically.
But anyway, he sent me a letter. It's very short, so I'll read it to you, okay? Thank you for contacting me to express your concern over U.S. military involvement in the Middle East. I appreciate hearing from you. Please know I understand your opposition to legislation that would provide President Obama war powers authorization. As you may know, a bill was introduced in the Senate Joint Resolution 29 that would provide an authorization for the use of military force, AUMF, against the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, ISIL, also known as Islamic State of Iraq, and Syria, ISIS. You will be pleased to know that I have been informed by Senate leadership that they will not be scheduling a vote on this legislation. Again, thank you for contacting me.
Okay, all right, good. That's good news. I mean, if that's accurate, yeah.
got to keep. You know, I also told him I was going to vote in a primary for a guy by the name of Greg Brannon. Okay, Dr. Greg, who's kind of like a Ron Paul type. Matter of fact, he's close to Ron Paul, which I'm going to vote for anyway. But that's besides the point. The fact of the matter is, it goes to show you if you contact these people, they finally will start listening.
In an election year, yes, they will. In an election year, they're going to pay attention.
The same thing in TPP. They also, both of the senators here in North Carolina said they will not support TPP now, even though both of these clowns voted for TPA, the Trade Authority Bill.
Yes.
So, you know, it seems like if you put on enough pressure on these clowns, they will start listening, you know?
Well, if you're willing to do enough pressure, yeah.
You got to read, but people got to constantly call you. I'm sure I'm not the only one that called them about this thing. The other thing I want to bring out about it, I'm very disturbed with Donald Trump saying that he gets advice from Richard Haas. I looked this guy up. I just looked him up during a break. And Wikipedia, this guy is the president of the Council on Foreign Relations.
Yeah, they're making a big deal about that particular one here. You know, when you're in a position like Donald Trump, you know a lot of people, and you're courteous and polite with a lot of people, even though in your heart you may not agree with everything that they say. And you know, Trump is playing politics. He's trying to basically be friends with everybody until those friendships get turned back and used against him. You know, like this David Duke thing, which they're still out there trying to say that David Duke, endorsed Donald Trump, and Trump won't distance himself. And actually, Trump has already 19 times said, I'm not part of what David Duke is doing. And David Duke has come on out and said, I didn't endorse the guy. I just said I'd vote for him, and that's not the same thing.
Well, the thing is, I'm more concerned about a guy, excuse me, the expression, a scumbag like Richard Haas than I am about David Duke. You know, I remember you had David Duke on your show already. He's not the greatest person in the world, but he's not all that bad either, really, when you come down to it. He's not a Klansman or a Nazi anymore, you know? But this guy is dangerous. Council on Foreign Relations is evil, plain and simple, you know?
Well, the Council on Foreign Relations is one of the key players in this push for a new world order global government. But, you know, I think Trump's relationship with Haas is about on the same level as his relationship with Israel. It's overtly courteous, but only to a certain point. And I know a lot of people are trying to make a big deal about, Trump won't condemn Israel and so forth, but Trump's been very honest in saying he's got business dealings with Israel that he doesn't want to risk. But if you read the Israeli media, they overwhelmingly do not want Trump. They don't think he's going to be fanatically loyal to Israel. He'll be courteous and polite, and that will be it, and that's not enough for Israel. Anyway, listen, Mark, I got to let you go. You go here. We're going to take another call from Sean, also in North Carolina. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Boy, we got a lot of people from North Carolina calling in. We got another one behind you.
Wow. I just wanted to comment about the actual urgency that this election has. I don't think people quite get it, because the way they hide everything is through the appearance of normalcy. You know, they want to prop the stock market. They want to make everything appear that, you know, everything's just fine. But
yeah, vote for the incumbency.
The politicians, the establishment, is the ones that have gotten us to this point. And all you have to do is look at the election. I mean, when they're having debates, when it involves Donald Trump, it's like walking into a room of vampires holding a crucifix. They're all scattering. They're all running. There's a reason for that. America lives in a captured nation, and I don't think people get that our captors want to murder us.
No, they don't want to murder us. They want to plunder us. If they murder you, you're of no use to them whatsoever, unless they're going to sell your body off for, commercial exploitation. No, they want us to be working hard and giving them all the wealth that our labor produces. That's what the system that they have set up. And they have used that wealth to basically lock in the government to their own interests, and Trump is a threat to that. Trump isn't interested in plundering the nation. He's got enough money of his own. You know, he's not taking corporate money, and because of that, he can't be owned and he can't be controlled. Newt Gingrich said it. He's uncontrollable. by the power elite, and that's why they're scared of him.
And yeah, and that's what I think gives us the best chance is with him. I mean, if you have somebody that you don't like push you in water and you can't swim, if somebody you don't like tries to get you out, aren't you going to let them? I mean, you're guaranteed to at least stay at this level or go down even worse if you keep this establishment in. So why can't people, even if they don't like him, say, hey, let's give it a chance. You gave Obama a chance after 4 years. Look what's happened.
Well, I think people do want to do that. I mean, that's my approach here. I mean, I don't agree with everything that Donald Trump says, but he's different. He is outsider. That's his attraction. If we go with the establishment career politicians, we're going to get another 4 years of exactly what we've had for the last 30. It's time to change course. Thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go, and we'll be right back. Hello, hi, America. Welcome back to the show. I'm watching Hillary Clinton on the We Hate Donald Trump network, formerly Fox News, and I just spotted some weird artifacts in the video of her face, and I've seen them before. Now, you're probably aware that there's Photoshop and there's other software where you can take a picture of somebody and reduce the wrinkles and the rest of it. What you may not realize is there's software at the professional level that does the exact same thing for moving video. And it does get used a lot in film and TV, and I think they're using it on her. Because there's just some bizarre behavior, especially around this part. All right, let's see. We're going to grab another phone call here, and we have Jerry in North Carolina. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, Mike, what's drove your passion so far? And my opinion has been death of Vince Foster.
Yes.
And which has messed up your life.
Yes.
In any event,
remember when they were telling you, see something, say something? Don't believe it. What they mean is if you see something one of you slaves is doing, say something. But you're not supposed to do that for the nobility. What's wrong with you?
Okay.
Yeah, it did. I mean, in hindsight, I wish I had, used a phony name or something. It did. I mean, my career was over before I even realized what had hit me.
I understand. Well, part of your puzzle is on a website called HenryMakow.com.
Mm-hmm.
Makow spelled M-A-K-O-W.
Well, that got sent to me, and unfortunately, he goes off on Satanist this and Illuminati that, and, I've heard that particular story before. I'm not sure I agree with it. It doesn't fit the evidence that I've seen. What I theorized was going on, this was 6 months into Bill Clinton's first term in office, and the Presidential Blind Trust had not been finished, which is supposed to be completed on Inauguration Day. And we know from testimony that came out of the Whitewater investigation that the Clintons did retain some of their financial wealth under their own control, which is a violation of the Blind Trust. So Vince Foster was tasked with filling out the trust declarations for the trustee. And if he knew the trust declarations were false, he also knew that if he signed those papers and the fraud was revealed, he would be going to jail. And so it looked like Foster had decided he was just going to resign and go away from this. And because of it, it would have brought even more attention to the fact that the trust declarations weren't completed. So I theorize that Foster was lured to a remote part of the White House with the potential of a tryst. I'm not going to say who with, but they developed a drinking problem afterwards. His neck was broken, and they took him to Fort Marcy Park, and they laid him out, and they wanted to fake a suicide by firing a gun into his mouth, but they used a small caliber gun, and the bullet actually bounced off the skull and exited on the neck. That's what created that second wound that they were trying to cover up. And the people who saw the body at Fort Marcy Park never saw an exit wound on the top of the skull. That sort of magically appeared later. And then, as you know, Hillary's people were going through Vince Foster's office before it was sealed by the police. They were rummaging through all of his papers. And 3 days later, the trust declarations, completed by an unknown party, except Hillary's fingerprints were on the paperwork, was submitted to the trustee's office, and that was the end of the situation. Now, that letter they tried to claim was Vince Foster's suicide note. The center section is written in Vince Foster's hand, but it looks to be the outline for a resignation letter, not a suicide letter. The paragraphs above and below are written in a different hand, and it looks like they tried to fake Foster's signature and botched it, and that's why they had to tear that suicide note up in such a weird way so that the part where the signature was, disappeared. I mean, amateur night. And, they got away with it because they are the force of the federal government, and the FBI was acting as their protectors at the time, which is why I am not optimistic about the FBI doing their job and actually arresting Hillary for espionage. I keep hearing that there are white hats inside the FBI that want to do the right thing, but I think they're still outnumbered by the black hats who are holdovers from the 1990s. That's where I am on that.
Well, you're just off on another tangent. I'm just trying to help you. If you look at the page today, I think you'll find out another story. May be true, may not be true.
I read that story. I already read that earlier today here, and so thank you very much for that information, and we're going to switch over to Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Michael, I was reading Anti-War this morning, and I saw where a bill is passed in Indiana. This is a state bill in Indiana that is awaiting the signature of their governor, a guy named Pence, that would require the Indiana public retirement system to identify and divest from any company that is boycotting Israel. Any company or organization, which would mean colleges or anything like that, or the Lutheran Church, for instance. So this is a multi-tiered thing. This is like if during the 60s, if the Ku Klux Klan had been making torches and hoods and making a lot of money off of it and using that money to blow up black churches or lynch black people. And we decided, no, we're not going to invest in any kind of torch or hood made by the Klan, and the government telling us that we have to. And now they're going to take public retirement money out of away from any company that does that. So
see, here's a problem with that. Here's a problem with that. Okay, it's not their money. Okay, now the boycott, divestment, sanctions movement is about people who are making decisions with their own money not to support Israel's apartheid. The state government doesn't have its own money in that retirement fund. That's the money that belongs to the retirees. And it should be invested where it's going to generate the maximum amount of return and not be used for political purposes. I think we need to get a lawyer involved on this because I don't think it's legal for the state governments to start, spending the money that belongs to the taxpayers to support a particular political agenda.
Well, I have no doubt that it's illegal and unconstitutional, certainly. But they also control that money. They control, if this goes through, Mike, it will be like all the institutional investors will then sooner or later go that way. And those are the big investors, really. So it's incredible that we have, 2% of the population willing to sell out the First Amendment rights of 330 million Americans because they feel uncomfortable and don't have a moral leg to stand on.
They're trying to bring a dictatorship down here. We're seeing it all across. Israel supporters want a dictatorship where you're not allowed to have an opinion about what Israel is doing. That's not what America is about. These people who are supporting Israel, who are trying to shut down boycott divestment, they're anti-American. They're about as anti-American as you can get. We got to take a break for commercials. Peter, thank you very much for the phone call. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to take another phone call. Ralph in New York. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. How you doing?
Hanging in there.
Yeah, I'm over here in New York City. I'm in front of Trump Tower watching. There's a lot of security in these buildings, if you notice that, throughout the city. And I'm starting to notice that, I don't know, I'm just kind of curious. Now that Trump is the head man running the Republican Party, what's next for him?
Well, obviously to win the White House and then actually try and get the country back on a business-like basis.
What do you see? I'm just kind of curious because now all these debates, it's like all these shenanigans with these debates going on with him and against him. Do you think it's he has it all wrapped up, or is it really it's a done deal?
No, it's not a done deal. It's not wrapped up. He is certainly leading the GOP nomination. The problem is he has the GOP party leadership who do not want him because he's not controllable by them. Certainly Hillary wants him out of the race because he's the one Republican candidate she cannot beat in the general election. And we're already seeing them try to drive Trump out the way they drove Ron Paul out, the way they drove Ross Perot out. And if that fails, they may try and take him out the way they took Robert Kennedy out. You know, Trump's got a long way to go, and he is in very great personal danger right now. That's why they've got security at his buildings.
But if they do that to him, if they're doing an assassination plot against him, there could be a major revolution in this country.
Yes, it could spark something. Yeah, because the American people are fed up with it. We sat and we took it with Ron Paul, and the last 8 years told us that was the wrong thing to have done. And if we just go with the flow and have another one of these pre-selected anointed candidates, go into the White House, nothing will change, and things will get much better for the money junkies and much worse for us. And I think we've all reached our breaking point.
Well, Newt Gingrich has just said himself today he's not part of the secret society.
Yeah. I mean, Gingrich said exactly what's going on here. You know, that Trump isn't one of their people. He's not part of the clique. He's not part of the team. He doesn't have the secret handshakes. You know, he hasn't, lay in the coffin and revealed secrets, all of that stuff.
He's not part of the Bohemian Grove and the secret society, the secret handshakes at 666.
Well, there's all kinds of secret societies, but, there's this little established political elite. And they've gotten used to being totally in control of the country over the last 100 years, to the point where now we have hereditary ruling families like the Bushes and the Clintons. Well, at least that's what they're trying to set up. And, Trump is a threat to that because he's giving the American people, for the first time in decades, a real alternative to the corporate banker-approved candidates that we get every 4 years.
Well, Mitt Romney's out. He just said it. I just saw the documentary online you mentioned yesterday. It's that documentary that's online. It's online. It's when Romney came to town.
Yes.
That's a very powerful documentary. I said, wow, it's amazing the way they took away the jobs and shut down factories, and he made hundreds of millions of dollars off these deals. I can imagine what could have done to the country if he was president.
Send that URL, send that link to the video to everybody that you know. And at this point, I think this is blowing up in their face. I mean, Romney's not going to get traction with the American people today for the same reason he didn't get traction back in 2012. Anyway, Ralph, we're going to let you go here. We got a bunch of calls. Thank you very much, and we're going to switch over here to Elizabeth in Connecticut. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. Thanks for taking my call. I want to say thank you for the link on the Iceman. That was so inspirational that you put up today. That was just amazing, that video. On the Wim Hof, the guy who can withstand extreme cold.
Yes.
It was really cool. And it was a good break from all the craziness. I mean, the palpable fear coming from the elite is reaching heights that I would never have dreamed of 5 years ago. It's unbelievable. There's a mass awakening happening. I mean, I see it all over the net.
Mm-hmm.
I see it when I go to the store. Yeah, I put out my Trump signs in my front yard, and they were stolen twice. I called the cops. He came by, and he's a Trump fan himself. And he told me to put a deer cam up because, that's the only way we can get him. I mean,
yes.
There is such an energy going on here that it's just amazing. So we go to Home Depot to pick out a board and make a new homemade Trump sign with the kids and I. And the guy who's cutting the board for us is a Trump supporter. And everybody just gets so excited. Half the people I know are for Trump. It's unbelievable.
Yes.
And what Mitt Romney did it's like egg in the face. He put egg on his own face and his entire party. It's out of control. So I just wanted to say that's the vibe that I'm getting here. And I think it's a great time to be alive. I think a major wake-up call for a lot of European Americans was watching those documentaries that came out earlier last fall about Europe.
Mm-hmm.
That was huge. I mean, I was a liberal until 2 months after Obama was elected. And then I was a Ron Paul fan, and I was a libertarian. And now I feel like I'm a diehard conservative, like, it's just a new kind of conservative. And there's just this wave of energy happening amongst the people that the elite, I don't think they understand our awareness level because of shows like yours and many, many others. And Dr.
Well, I think they're aware. I think they're aware. Trump is a figurehead for a much larger phenomenon of the loss of all the control mechanisms that have been built up over the last 100 years, the corporate media, the education system as brainwashing, the fact that because of the internet and the independent media, ordinary people just don't believe what the government says any longer. And they've lost their ability to lie to the public with impunity. That right there is the single greatest victory of the independent media and the internet. We have taken away from government and corporate media their ability to lie with impunity. And they're lost without it. And that's why they're scared. They're seeing.
And we can also communicate.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can also communicate with each other via various modes through your show, like now, listening to all the callers. It's amazing via Twitter, via, comment boards. So we have a kind of communication that is very exciting. So, and I want to say that, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to say it's a very pure expression of real democracy as opposed to the sort of top-down fascist system that was calling itself democracy that we all grew up in. But now we have a true democracy, person-to-person, peer-to-peer, and they don't know how to deal with it. The people inside Washington, D.C., Newt Gingrich's secret society, have run this country with lies, fraud, and deception for so many years, they don't know any other way. And now that it doesn't work, they're panicking because they don't want to give up their wealth and power and prosperity and comfort. They want to go on living the lives of potentates on the backs of the rest of us, and they're very upset about it.
I think it's even more evil than that because they've committed crimes against humanity. So, the truth is like running water. It goes in, it flows. When you're trying to hold up a lie, you have to keep paddling and paddling and paddling. And that is our truth. The truth is just starting, that spigot is opening wide open and they're scared. That's the way
they are very, very scared. They're cornered, and cornered animals are dangerous, so we all have to be very careful. Thank you very much for the phone call, Elizabeth. I have to let you go. We're going to take another break for commercials. John in Hawaii, I'm going to take your call as soon as we come back from these words from our sponsors. So don't hang up. Don't go away. We'll be there in a second. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go right back to the phones here and talk to John here in Hawaii. Aloha, bra. What's up?
Hey, aloha, Michael. I really love your show, and a lot of things I was going to say were said in the last 5 minutes. But I think the most important thing, I was about 20 years old when Robert Kennedy was running for president. I was actually working for NBC, got to shake his hand, was actually in the hotel when he was shot. And I'll tell you, the energy right now about Donald Trump is really similar to what I was feeling, and a lot of my friends were feeling about Robert Kennedy. We really felt like the system was coming apart. And Robert Kennedy was going to make it happen. So I want everyone to take a deep breath. But I'll tell you, back then also I was getting into understanding how I could personally dissociate from the system. The most important thing, I think, for all the Trump supporters and anyone out there that is really trying to change this world is we've got to start eating organically. I know it might seem trite or something to say it, but we got to get away from all these chemicals that are in the food and in our water. And we've really got to start taking care of our health and our friends' health. Because I know we're under an assault right now.
We are. We have to disconnect. We have to stop our dependency on these corporate supplies of water and food because they're deliberately feeding us poison because then they get more money fixing the problems they're giving us. I mean, we just put up an article, about the Flint water. Well, down in Texas, they've got black stuff coming out of their faucets. They're feeding us poison. They're giving us poisoned water to drink so they can turn around and say, oh, boy, you're really medically messed up. Don't worry. We have a pill to sell you.
You're absolutely right, but people really have to take this to heart and make it real. It's not going to be hard for these young callers that are all excited about Trump. Start reading your labels. Start avoiding the fluoride. Start feeding your kids healthy food. And I think then understand what we're really on this planet for. the one thing we all are united for, that's why Louis Farrakhan, David Duke, all kinds of people from all sides of the spectrum are supporting Trump, is because the one thing we have in common here in the United States is the Constitution. And that people have to understand that that's what we're fighting for, is to come back to some kind of semblance of law and order in this republic. And the other thing I want to say is people have to understand that the United States is a corporation. And to think that they're actually going to let us elect a leader would be like thinking Apple or Microsoft would let us elect their CEO. And people really have to take a deep breath and understand what they can control and can't control and start protecting themselves and begin working on their own personal self-awareness. Because the only thing that's really going to save us is keeping our bodies healthy enough so that we can become self-aware, loving, kind individuals, because that's the most important thing we have to do at this point. That's all I got to say.
All right, well, mahalo, John. Thank you very much. We're going to let you go and switch over to Donna in New Mexico. Aloha, Donna. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I watched the debates last night, and I've got a little bit of a different take on it.
Okay.
And it's a word of caution. Clearly, it was an ambush. It was a triangulation between Fox, Cruz, and Rubio.
Yes.
It was deplorable. I was a little surprised that Trump was not better prepared. And I actually wrote to his campaign today and issued a few comments of caution. I remember what happened to Rand Paul. And Rand Paul, he abandoned his voter base. He tried to do the centrist thing. He certainly was not his father. And I also told the campaign that Ron Paul really laid the groundwork here for what's happening with Trump. I don't think Trump would be anywhere near where he is if Ron Paul had not come before, and others as well. And I think that's an important point to make. But I found him taking this sort of centrist approach, and it just reminded me of what Rand Paul did. And when he did that, it caused a lot of problems for him. And I said, just stay the course. Don't lose the message. Keep on it, because your numbers will grow based on that. But if you start doing the same thing Rand Paul did, you're gonna go in a different direction.
Well, at this point, I would almost say to Trump, don't bother showing up for any more of these debates. You're already ahead. And every one of these debates is simply a let's club Donald Trump like a baby seal session. Donald Trump is not going to gain anything from any of these debates. He's leading. He should just go on out, hit the campaign trail, make speeches to an audience that's receptive to him, and not get suckered into any more of these debates where GOP officials got the vast majority of the tickets and only 50 regular, ordinary Americans were allowed in. If I were Trump, I would just tell him, I'm not going to bother showing up for these things anymore.
But then won't they call him a chicken and say, oh, he's afraid?
No.
I'm not sure that it seems like no matter what he does, he's going to get that. But what did you think about him not showing up for CPAC?
I think maybe that was a good thing, because it's just going to be another session where everybody's going to scream about how bad and evil Donald Trump is, and he's got better things to do. He's out there, making speeches. And, he's leading in the polls in Louisiana, Michigan, and Mississippi. He could take Florida tomorrow by a huge margin. And that's Rubio's home state.
Yeah. One thing I would like to see, and I mentioned this in my email to the campaign, it's time to really get down to some brass tacks about policy. And I think last night he really could have turned things around if he would have, instead of reducing down to the name-calling thing and being involved in that. There's so many facts out there that he could use against these people. These are morons. It's not that hard to take them down. He could have put the ball back in his court very easily just by kind of shooting back with some facts. But I didn't feel like he was really prepared for the onslaught, and everybody knew it was going to be an onslaught. It was a full frontal attack against Trump. So that's all I had to say, some observations, and I hope that he stays the course and doesn't try to go the centrist route. That's what screwed us up in the first place. So,
well, the net result is all the online polls are showing that Trump was perceived as the winner in the debate last night, and at this point, he's got a solid base that are just going to support him all the way forward. So thank you very much, Donna, and we're going to switch over to Eric in Massachusetts. Aloha, Eric. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Greetings, Mike. It's an honor to speak with you online. A long-time listener. I'm 38 years old, and I'd like to speak for people in my generation who are, grew up being promised an honest country, an honest election, where you go to school, go to college, get given jobs, or have grades available for you as an opportunity. And our leaders were elected honestly, And people of my generation are clearly seeing right now that this is not the case. And regardless of whether you agree with everything any of the candidates say, the fact what's going on first with Ron Paul in the former election and currently with Trump in this election, it's so clear our political system is not representing the will of the people.
No, it isn't. It isn't, and it hasn't for quite some time. There was a study done recently that said basically 95% of public opinion is completely and utterly ignored by the government. They're out for themselves and their cronies, and they just see us as livestock, feedstock, walking wallets, and the breeders of the next generation of obedient workers and soldiers. That's all we're good for in their minds.
Again, people of my generation, both sides of the political spectrum currently are seeing this and are very aware of this. Just the fact whether Trump being a candidate who's met the requirements to be a candidate, who with his opinions, which he's entitled to, and his policies that he's entitled to, whether you agree with them or not, the fact that we're watching a legitimate candidate be completely destroyed by mainstream media, by the establishment, is just cluing everyone in that the system we currently have is hopelessly broken. And I think a lot of people are seeing the fact that when it is completely so broken that there's no hope of fixing it, the last real hope is to let it fall apart. I mean, very few people in my circles are talking about open revolution or violent revolution in the street. Like they say, we're going to pick with some soda and some popcorn.
Well, let me say, we're almost to the top of the hour here. We've got to bring on the Lady Claire here. I would greatly prefer not to see a violent revolution in this country because the wrong people get killed and crippled in these things. We're seeing the corporate media and the party leadership attack Trump. They're not destroying him. If anything, they're helping him along because Americans are seeing Trump as the outsider, the underdog. They're seeing Trump as the first chance they have to elect a president who isn't coming out of that permanent secret select society that chooses our leaders for us. And we understand the principle of democracy is we're supposed to pick our own candidates and then pick our own leaders out of those candidates, not just sit there and choose the lesser of several evils presented to us by the money junkies. And that's kind of where...
Like you've said so many...
Okay.
So many times, the fast pace of going down to dictatorship is force it to act.
Okay, Eric, Eric, I got to let you go. I'm sorry. Plus, we had a bad phone connection. We got to take a break for news and commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. And for those of you on BAM user, this gorgeous creature sitting behind me is the lovely Lady Claire, who likes to join us on hour 3 of Friday with her unique perspective on the world. Say hello, dear.
Hello.
Hello. And before we get started with her, though, we have a caller who's been waiting patiently since the last segment. So, Jeff in Florida, aloha. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. It's great to talk to you. My local congressman is David Jolly, and I'm not sure if you heard about it yet, but they've just introduced a bill into Congress now to punish Apple for not breaking into that California iPhone.
Okay, and what is the constitutional ground for them punishing Apple? I mean, first of all, as John McAfee showed, the FBI should have been able to get into the phone very easily. The FBI mucked it up when they changed the iCloud settings. And then they went to Apple and said, fix this for us. And Apple said, no. And, I mean, on what are they going to do to Apple? Are they going to, like, impose a tax on it? I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, they've gone so completely off the Constitution.
Well, what they've done is they're going to prohibit any federal government entity from doing business with Apple. And in my opinion, that's a bill of attainder, which is specifically prohibited by the Constitution.
You're absolutely right. That is prohibited by the Constitution, and it's one more reminder that our current regime, our junta, that serves Israel so nobly, is in fact, illegal, unconstitutional, and illegitimate. I mean, that's ridiculous. And apparently, I guess it's carrying a threat because I got another story here that Amazon has very quietly remotely disabled all encryption on their devices. So if you have any kind of Amazon device, you basically do not want to be putting anything secure on there. In fact, let me skip on down here and find that one. Yeah, Amazon. This is being reported over in, let's see, yournewswire.com. Amazon secretly removes encryption protection from all of its devices, and these are apparently all Android-powered. So, I mean, it's ridiculous. This is a war on privacy. It's being sold to us on the claim it'll stop crime and terror. It never has. In fact, if anything, computer crime has gone completely out of control. And I'm a great believer in privacy. The Fourth Amendment gives us a right to privacy until the government knows for a fact we're doing something wrong. So you can have my Captain Midnight secret decoder badge when you pry it from my cold dead fingers.
Absolutely. And now all private businesses have to bend their will to the government or seek financial sanctions.
Well, that right there is fascism. That right there is fascism. The government is not supposed to interfere with anybody until they know a crime has been committed. And other than that, they're supposed to mind their own business. I mean, this is just completely out of control. All right, well, listen, Jeff, I got to let you go. The Lady Claire is here champing at the bit. Thank you for the phone call. And what is your first story?
That was kind of an odd analogy. I'm not champing. I'm just enthusiastic, but concerned. There was an article I saw today in Global Research which does a lot of good work, and the title is Lebanon Next on the Chopping Block? Recent Saudi, GCC, Turkish moves suggest that it is. Now, apparently, some time ago, an attempt has already been made to disrupt the Lebanese government by means of a color revolution several months ago. However, recent reports have revealed a possible plan by Turkey and Saudi Arabia, in concert with the rest of the anti-Syrian powers, to open up a second front of terrorist destabilization in northern Lebanon. The result of this plan would be not only to increase instability on southwestern Syrian borders and eliminate a friendly, or at least a non-hostile one, from any positive diplomatic or state-to-state action between Syria and Lebanon, but it would also draw Hezbollah back into the Lebanese borders and out of the fight with Syria.
Well, Israel's been shelling across the Lebanese border for the last couple of days.
Right.
And maybe that's why the corporate media has been so obsessing about the O.J. Simpson's knife, or the knife found on his property.
Yeah.
Because they're not covering any of this rush to World War III. I think they're hoping they're going to catch you by surprise. You're going to wake up Monday morning and, oh, we're in a world war. All right, let me take little Johnny and Sally and send them off to the recruiting office.
Well, what I think is that with major concrete assurances of U.S. support, they might well do just that. I mean, after all, a couple of days ago, the Gulf Cooperation Council has designated Lebanon's Hezbollah movement as a terrorist group. And the GCC's Secretary General has accused it of recruiting youth from Gulf states for attacks. And Hezbollah is a key political and military force in Lebanon and is very deeply involved in the conflict. And the GCC decision appears to be the latest measure by Saudi Arabia and its allies aimed at countering Hezbollah's power over Lebanon's government. And what I think, and I'd like your feedback on this, the American government, if assisting in an attack to create regime change in Lebanon, will do it covertly, most probably using Saudi and possibly Israeli military assets in order to create plausible deniability over its role in this, just as it has by using Saudi military as their proxy in Yemen, where the U.S. is providing weaponry and intelligence. That way, the government won't have to sell or defend these actions to the American people, just as none of the correspondents on corporate media are saying a word about the slaughter going on in Yemen. What do you think, Michael?
Well, I think there's also, they're going to try and go back to and repeat this idea of somehow making it look like Bashar al-Assad deserves being attacked and invaded and having his country taken away. Mm-hmm. They've gone back to try and reprise this idea that Syria's government is killing the Syrian people, and it's ridiculous. Sarah Palin actually had an intelligent comment on this very thing. It's our thought for the day up at the top. We're bombing Syria because Syria is bombing Syria. Does that make any sense?
Yep.
And it really doesn't. It's an excuse. I think this whole world war is going to uncork as soon as the U.S. and its allies figure out a way to somehow blame it on Syria or Russia. And they're blaming everything on Russia. They're probably going to blame that asteroid flying by next week. It was an attempt by Russia to crush the United States of America. They're claiming Russia's behind the chaos with the refugees in Europe. They're still trying to pin Flight 17 and even 370 on Russia. And, of course, they're not getting any traction because we know the one thing the U.S. government is producing in huge volume is USDA choice bovine excrement.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I wonder how that will be timed toward the so-called peace conference renewal, I believe, on the 9th of March.
Well, I think they're looking more at the parliamentary elections, which are coming in on the 13th.
Of April.
Yeah, because if they move before that, you know, then everybody's going to say, why didn't you give them a chance to form a new government?
Yeah.
And but after that parliamentary election, if it doesn't go the way the U.S. wants, then they're just going to go on in. And they're already trying to lay the case that Russia, which was invited into Syria by the government, has no right to be there, and that the U.S. and England and Saudi Arabia and the rest of them have a right to go into Syria because, after all, Assad is a bad guy, and you don't want us to let the bad guys get away.
Yeah. It's going to be very telling how those parliamentary elections unfold in Syria next month.
Okay.
It's going to be about a month, I think, from now.
We've got about 45 minutes before the next commercial. Let's tease your next story.
Okay. Officials in Alabama are tracking child social media to punish students for inappropriate posts made out of school.
Yeah, we talked about this one yesterday, and like I said, I can understand watching the behavior of the children in school, but spying on kids in their homes, on their social media, that, I think, crosses a very, very dangerous line.
Yeah.
If there should be anybody monitoring the kids' social media, it should be the parents.
Yeah.
Because what is inappropriate for one group of people is not inappropriate for another. I actually got an email from somebody who's a student in school, well, we got to take a break for commercials. When I come on back, I'll give you an illustration of why I don't want teachers deciding what children should be talking about when they're not in school. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And before we go back to Claire here, I have to share this story with you. You are not going to believe this. This is actually coming from the Washington Post, the newspaper of record for the federal government. And they have a story. I'm going to read you the headline verbatim. Psychologists and massage therapists are reporting Trump anxiety among their clients. And so they're apparently talking to the psychologist, Allison Howard, who no doubt has plenty of pills to sell, saying that in addition to the usual anxieties that her patients are dealing with, marriage, children, and career, they're now seeing a new source of stress, the political rise of Donald Trump. Folks, that's what the phrase jumping the shark was invented for, that kind of nonsense. The next step is going to be to declare anybody supporting Donald Trump as mentally ill and a danger to the nation. How can so many people be suffering Trump stress when they're all voting for him? God, talk about desperation on the cusp of madness. It is just totally out of control over there. All right, Claire, what is your next story?
Well, the next story here, and it's one, again, that the prostitutes will not touch with a 10-foot poker.
That's why you're on this show.
Yeah, right. Apparently, the conflict between Donetsk and Kiev, apparently there are massive exercises, and Kiev is advancing on Donetsk as we speak. And both sides apparently are continuing to violate the Minsk agreement. And there was a ministry that was appealing to the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission in Ukraine to use his influence to put an end to Kiev's attempts to escalate the situation. But despite the fact that Alexander Hug personally promised in Minsk that the buffer zones would remain demilitarized, there has so far been no reaction from the international observers, which to me means Minsk is DOA.
Minsk was DOA the moment it was signed here, and we know that Poroshenko's been shelling the Eastern Ukrainian republics. They're firing back in self-defense.
Yeah.
Everyone is trying to pretend that they are not the ones who want the war.
Right.
And what Poroshenko has been doing in Ukraine is the same thing Erdogan is doing down in Syria, trying to provoke the other side into making a decisive move that can be seized on as the reason we must go to war.
The bloody rag.
Yes.
And even as we speak, the U.S. government is training Ukrainian troops. They're working with Canadians, British, and Lithuanian forces at the remote training center near Yavoriv, which is now referred to as, I love this euphemism, the Joint International Peacekeeping Security Center. What a laugh. The Canadians are also training the Ukrainians at another facilities to counter IEDs, and they'll be beginning flight safety training.
Are they going to be using the F-35 for that?
I would like to kind of hope not, considering...
Or the F-22.
Yeah. But apparently 5 Ukrainian army battalions will be coming through this training center in the months ahead. And it is mentioned that when these people finish their training, where are they going to go? They're going to go right back to Donetsk. They're getting ready for a massive invasion of the breakaway republics. And I have to wonder, will U.S. forces be embedded with Ukrainian forces when this happens, and how will this impact U.S.-Russian relations?
They're just trainers. They're just advisors. They're not there to actually fight. Of course not. How silly of you.
No, I am old enough at 66 to remember how Vietnam started. It started the same way, with advisors.
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
Next, there is apparently a senator who is holding the aid to Flint, Michigan hostage. And this comes out of the Daily Beast, and it's under a category called Shamed. And apparently, this is one guy, Senator Mike Lee from Utah, is stalling plans to alleviate the nearby town's drinking water crisis, a disaster that has had a disproportionate and devastating impact on the poor and the young. Lee is using a Senate tactic used to gum up the works known as a hold, which is generally kept secret so the lawmaker can remain anonymous. However, 2 senior Senate sources confirmed to the Daily Beast that Lee is behind the maneuver to stall an utterly uncontroversial provision. Now, if the senator has a science advisor, which I'm beginning to think he doesn't, if there is someone on his staff who could break this down in very simple words, very small number of syllables, it appears that he has no problem whatsoever with poor kids continuing to get poisoned by the water in Flint. The situation there is critically urgent because even if the parents are able to get some kind of therapy for them, either through chelation or intravenous vitamin C, the problem is that these therapies cannot undo the damage to their brains, which has already been done.
But has anybody come up with a reason why Mike Lee is doing this? I mean, why is he putting a hold on it? What does he hope to achieve?
Well,
does he just think it's too much money to spend on American citizens and he wants to send it to Israel?
The only thing I can think is that he believes that he doesn't exactly know where the money is going, and it's someone else's problem to begin with. But I've got to tell you, Mike, now that this guy has been publicly named and shamed, his recalcitrance on this issue, which seems to have no basis in fact, puts him directly at odds with the morals of the voters of his district, many of which are deeply religious Mormon people. Now, the Mormons I've met, usually very good people, industrious people, and they care about kids. What he is doing now that they know will not go unnoticed in the next election cycle.
I don't know. I feel like we're missing something important here on the issue of why he would do it. It's not a huge amount of money.
No.
We know that they are finally starting to replace some of those lead water mains in Flint as of today. I don't know. We're missing an important piece to this, and I think we need to find that out.
All right. Okay.
We have about another 2 minutes before the next commercial break.
Okay. Well, apparently we have Libya 2.0. The war is going to be starting up again.
I think it's 3.0 at this stage.
3.0. Okay. Last week...
I've lost count of how many times we have bombed those poor people.
Apparently, a major French newspaper, Le Monde, reported that the French government is engaged in a secret war in Libya and has deployed special forces already.
So don't tell anybody.
Yeah, right.
It's a secret.
The Pentagon has also talked about its own presence in Libya, and Britain is understood to have some special ops there as well. The numbers keep growing, and other assets for a Western war in Libya, which officials have been publicly championing for months, are moved into place. And it's only a matter of time before this secret war becomes a public one.
Well, I think that just happened here. All right, we're going to have to take a break for commercials, and we'll be back after a few minutes. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And before we went to the commercial break, we were talking about this story where educators at a school are monitoring the social media behavior of their students when the students are off the school campus, at home, out at the park, hanging with their friends on weekends. And I am appalled at this invasion of privacy. If anybody should be monitoring the children when they're not in school, it's the parents. And the reason I say that is because they're being punished for what is termed inappropriate comments. But appropriateness is a very subjective thing. And I don't want the teachers arrogating the right of the parent to decide what is appropriate for the kid. And I'll give you a good example. I got an email from somebody where they were in school, and their teacher is campaigning against Donald Trump in the classroom on tax dollars, and gave as the reason for opposing Trump because Trump doesn't believe in human-caused global warming. Now, if this teacher is monitoring students' social media and she sees them talking about how global warming is really a hoax, what is she going to do? Punish them for not believing as the teacher does? That's clearly an area in which there is cause to doubt. And everybody has a right to their own opinion on certain subjects. And no, teachers are not supposed to be there to punish children for not believing as they are told to believe, especially on certain areas that trespass onto the rights of the parents. The teachers are supposed to be teaching job skills, reading, writing, mathematics, science, engineering, logic, typing, those kinds of things. They're not supposed to be spending our tax dollars teaching our children, brainwashing our children to believe as they are told to believe. You will believe the world is getting warmer. You will believe you are to blame. You will believe that you must pay carbon taxes. And if you dare say anything else on your social media in your own time, in your own home, you will be punished severely. So you can understand where I'm coming from on this.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
Next story.
Erdogan calls planned pro-Kurdish anti-military march an appeal to terrorism. Earlier this week, HDP's co-chairman Selahattin Demirtas called on his supporters to organize a march against the anti-terrorist operation conducted by Ankara in the Kurdish city of Diyarbakir. He also urged to walk to the Sur district, where a curfew has been in effect for over 2 months, and where fighting between the Kurdistan Workers' Party, PKK, and government forces continue. And Erdogan, from his little visit to Nigeria, which I thought was ironic, said, "I do not believe that my Kurdish brothers will respond to this appeal, which looks like the appeal to terrorism. I think that the prosecutors will do their job. Nobody has the right to intrude on the peace of our country." Well, I have a memo.
Isn't that what he's doing to Syria?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. You know, I mean, pot kettle black. And I do have a message for the gentleman. As the late President Kennedy said, when peaceful revolution is impossible, violent revolution is inevitable. Turkey's shameful marginalization and persecution of ethnic Kurds in Turkey is nothing short of completely immoral. And when there is no political process by which a situation can be remedied, that in and of itself may well lead to an upsurge in violence from those being oppressed. And that is exactly what 21st century Turkey is facing right now. And, Michael, it's tearing Turkey apart. As reported by Sputnik News on the 29th of February of this year, according to numbers supplied by Turkey's Human Rights Association, Turkey's military operation against Kurds in the country has been deadlier than the opening of the Syrian conflict. Turkey's operation in Kurdish areas have turned into all-out wars, with hundreds of dead. Head of Turkey's Human Rights Association, Öztürk Türkdoğan, spoke to Sputnik News and told them, the intensity of the violence reported by Türkdoğan can be compared with the opening months of the Syrian conflict in terms of both the scope of violence and civilian deaths reported by civil rights bodies. And Turkey's violence is somewhat more local when compared to Syria's, although attacks on Turkish soldiers have taken place outside Diyarbakir province. And similarly in Sizuri, where, according to their estimates, the military had killed more than 200 civilians. We're talking about women, we're talking about kids, we're talking about the medically fragile elderly. In addition, there are about 130 people who have been injured and are waiting to get care. And what I'd say to this gentleman is the world is watching what's going on in Turkey. And you cannot keep these events away from the scrutiny of the net. So I'm wondering what he and his government will do now, because the world knows.
I think we've reached a stage almost where these politicians don't even care if we know they're lying. They're just going to go through the motions, you know, playing out the script that's going to go into the history books, and they're going to keep on saying, you know, we have a right to invade, we have to, and we're all laughing at them or crying, depending upon who's being killed in all of this stuff, and they almost don't seem to care. They're absolutely convinced and serene, we're not going to do anything about it, and I think in the long run, we don't have to. It's tearing itself apart right now. But, you know, tyrants throughout history have made that mistake of going one step too far, serene in their confidence that the people would never do anything about what was being done. Whether that was King George III and his Currency Act, which led to the American Revolution, Charles I hiring Scottish troops to oppress his own people, that cost him his head, Ceausescu, Louis XVI, Mussolini, all those dead kings who keep bobbing up in the peat bogs all over Europe. You know, I mean, rulers make mistakes, and they can be very, very costly. We're going to grab a real quick phone call. This is going to be our last phone call of the day. Will in Ohio, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Claire and Mike. I love you guys.
Thank you.
I just wanted to reach out to everybody. This is a comment basically for the listeners. I want everyone that hears my voice right now to know that we are the resistance. We're what's left, and this show is not here to entertain you. These are ideas, and if the knowledge and the information that once it reaches you, if it stops with you, then the velocity of that information stops also. We need to be talking to people. We need to get this out there. Everybody you know needs to know about Mike and Claire. And this is a movement, so make sure it keeps moving. That's what I wanted to say, Mike.
Well, thank you very much for those very, very kind words. And, we try and make the show funny and light and entertaining because we're dealing with topics that are pretty daunting and pretty scary. You know, everybody out here in the truth movement to a greater or lesser degree, you know, is taking risks. Their lives are derailed, destroyed, ruined. Apparently the federal government has gone on a binge of arresting people who supported the Bundy Ranch Patriots, including a campaign official of Donald Trump. And so this could be the beginning of the filling of the gulags. But ultimately, these are very serious topics. We are the resistance. There's a lot of us, though. That's the good news.
And the other thing I would like to emphasize, it's a peaceful resistance. It's a resistance of education and information. It is that kind of a resistance.
This revolution is not being fought with muskets. It's being fought with keyboards.
Right.
And, you know, what are they going to do? Ban assault keyboards? You know, no keyboards with more than 3 characters per second auto repeat.
Right. No, but it also needs to be done in the most peaceful and gentle way possible. At 66, I identify myself as a Christian pacifist activist, which means that I want to see this government doing things in an intelligent, negotiated way, creating win-win situations in their geopolitical disputes.
All right. Well, we're coming up on a commercial break. Will, thank you very much for the kind words. We're going to let you go, and we're going to shut down the phone lines and come back with the last segment of our program today. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And Lady Claire.
Apparently, there is a U.S. aircraft carrier group moving into the contested South China Sea. The U.S. Navy has dispatched an aircraft carrier and several ships accompanying it into the South China Sea in the last couple of days. A deployment of thousands, let me back up on that word, thousands of U.S. sailors to a region, a top U.S. admiral has said last week, is getting increasingly militarized by China.
Well, I saw another article, the carrier doesn't go by itself. It goes with a screening force of auxiliary vessels, Aegis cruisers, sub-hunters, and usually 1, possibly 2 fast attacks out front. This is a lot of hardware. And they're going into an area of the world where the U.S. legally, technically doesn't have any right to go. I mean, everybody has a right to transit international waters, but the U.S. is trying basically to scare China into pulling back from these islands that China has built. Yeah. And again, the real goal, ultimately, at bottom, the U.S. government needs to destroy the ruble and the yuan in order to delay the collapse of the U.S. paper dollar. That's what it really all comes down to. Mm-hmm. That's why they're willing to send off literally millions of your children to die horrible, painful deaths to prop up their ink and paper private central bank system.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of Russia.
Yes.
Obama has apparently prolonged the sanctions on Russia over Ukraine crisis. And this article was so hysterically badly wrong, I don't know where to begin. Because it was said the United States imposed the sanctions in March of 2014 after Russian troops seized Crimea from Ukraine, sparking the most serious crisis between Moscow and Washington since the end of the Cold War. Really? Michael, this is complete utter madness.
This is the big lie tactic.
Yeah.
You know, and they just keep thinking that if they keep on repeating, Russia stole Crimea, Russia stole Crimea, Russia stole Crimea, that you will obediently believe it like the mindless working slaves you're all supposed to be.
You know, and someone needs to tell the person who wrote this gently that the big lie went out with the whoopee cushion and the dribble glass in the age of the internet.
And the swastika.
Yeah.
And here's the but we all know the corporate media are paid to lie to you.
Yeah.
They're correspondents and prostitutes.
Yes.
Remember what Swinton said. If they ever dared put their honest opinion in, they would be out of a job. Yep. Remember that Fox News synthetic bovine growth hormone lawsuit, which set the legal precedent that the owners of media can order reporters and journalists and TV talking heads to lie to you, and if they refuse, they can legally be fired for cause. Okay? That's what they do, and they're going to keep on with the lies. And the best thing we can all do is simply stand up and say, we're not going to listen to anything the corporate media, the government has to say any longer, because it's all air, it's all helium, it's all equine excrement, and there's no truth out there.
No.
And we're not going to listen to you anymore. We're going to tune you on out. I mean, Fox News has been going crazy over this knife issue with the O.J. Simpson trial.
Like that's news?
Yeah, well, supposedly it's news now because the knife was just surrendered by the police officer who'd kept it as a souvenir. Interesting timing, of course, to support that new mini-series, The People versus O.J. Simpson, which, you know, they're claiming is hugely popular. I'm not tuning into it. We lived through it. We don't need to watch it on TV.
No.
And besides which, of course, I have a half-brother who used to be an LA County sheriff who was in the visiting center at jail when O.J. told Rosie Greer that, yes, he had done it. So, and the Judge Lance Ito would not allow that to be brought into the court.
Yeah.
But again, in the United States, if you're above a certain level in wealth and fame, the rules don't apply to you anymore.
You're untouchable. And speaking of untouchables,
yes,
there was a very thoughtful article in HuffPo, and it said, will Hillary Clinton lead us into another war in the Middle East?
Is this a trick question?
No. Here,
okay.
But it was written, those who trumpet the former Secretary of State's foreign policy experience are engaged in little more than old-fashioned campaign spin. But the problem that the article never addresses is that Clinton is pathologically incapable of ever admitting she has ever done anything wrong, which is consistent with a classic sociopathic personality.
All politicians do that. They're going to take credit for anything good that happens, even if they had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
And if anything bad goes on, they're going to find somebody to blame, some lower-level official, somebody else's fault, or the will of the imaginary playmate in the sky.
Yep.
That's how they get to be politicians. And that's why people are responding to Donald Trump, because he comes out of a completely different environment.
Yeah.
He comes out of the world of business, where if you get a reputation for not keeping your promises, you are over and done with.
You're out.
Wrap him up in plastic, put him in the freezer, he's gone.
Yeah.
And so Donald Trump, in many ways, is still dangerously naive about the world of politics he's walking into. And I think in many ways he's as naive as Jimmy Carter was. But you know, with somebody like Donald Trump, that he's telling you what he really thinks.
Yeah.
And if he makes you a promise, he's going to keep it. Because that's the environment he comes out of. Politicians, they lie about everything all the time.
And the advantage to Trump is that he's bright. He can learn. He can be educated. in an intelligent way.
Oh, the way he is able to deflect all these attacks during the debates here, he's thinking on his feet. He can think extemporaneously.
Yeah.
You take a Hillary Clinton, if she is asked a question that wasn't on the pre-approved list, she stands there like, a deer in the headlights,
Right.
Hit the air brake, Chester, hit the air brake, Chester.
Yeah. And because she is one of the most rabid Israelistas on the American political scene, and that makes me wonder how much money she's getting from AIPAC and how much Israel donated to the Clinton Foundation, one can be assured that if humanly possible, she will turn Syria and the rest of the Middle East into a killing field of unprecedented proportions.
I mean, Israel even let her touch the Wailing Wall. That's normally not supposed to be something where the women are, But she's up there and she says, okay, I touched the masonry. Can I be president now? Okay.
And she is the war candidate in the 2016 election. To satiate the gargantuan economic appetites of the U.S. military-industrial complex, by whom she is largely owned, she will most probably make sure that we are at war with both Russia and China, and that the draft is reinstituted under her watch. And I'd like all of our listeners and readers to remember, the draft legislation bills, and I say that in plural because there are several, are also going to be coming not only for your sons but your daughters as well.
For combat roles.
Yeah.
For combat roles.
Hello.
They're going to send our young girls into combat roles where they're going to get shot and killed. And let's be honest, they're going to get gang raped along the way because that's a big problem they don't want to talk about.
Yeah. Michael, one last thing.
Please.
Okay. Monsanto is suing California for telling people the truth about its chemicals. It's suing the state for its intent to include glyphosate, the main ingredient in its wildly popular herbicide Roundup, on its Proposition 65 toxic chemicals list.
Glyphosate is the name.
I'm sorry,
There's a legitimate reason to put it on there. There are reports on its toxic effects around the world. The World Health Organization has declared it a probable carcinogen, and probably the only reason they didn't say definite carcinogen was all the lobbying Monsanto was doing to not get it listed at all.
And all the money.
And,
Remember.
That lobbying and money kind of go together.
Yeah.
But we're literally in a world right now where corporations that are rich enough are able to sell you dangerous, harmful products and tell you, look, it's your imagination that you grew an extra hand out of your forehead.
Yeah,
You're not to blame
exist.
on that. And we know this really good plastic surgeon who'll fix it up for you, and Obamacare will cover maybe a third of it. Okay, we got about a minute and a half left to go.
Okay.
All right.
One more. Israel bribed GOP senator with $1 million to shut down the Iran deal. And apparently Tom Cotton accepted the $1 million from Israel to shut down the Iran nuclear deal.
Well, there was some wasted money.
Yeah, and wow, only $1 million.
Well, the price has gone down. Everybody's, competition drives down prices.
Yeah.
Story coming out of 21st Century Wire. Apparently, during last night's debate, Donald Trump came out and said that he thinks it's time for the United States of America to get along with other countries, including Russia. That is, of course, an absolute slap in the face, kick in the gonads to the neocons who, from that Project for the New American Century, wanted 100 years of the U.S. conquering the rest of the planet.
Amazing.
And now we have a candidate who says, that may not be such a good idea.
Yeah.
There's the music. Time for Claire and I to get on out of here. And we're hope you have a really good weekend. We'll be back here Monday on the Genesis Communication Network. Until then, stay skeptical, stay informed, make good choices, share what you know with everybody that you know. Direct them to GCN, direct them to WhatReallyHappened.com. Our audience is growing rapidly, but we can always use more. We'll be back Monday. Aloha, America.